Hi everybody, Rich here from RW Hobbies. Welcome back to part number 2 of my EA-6B Prowler build. Now this part we're going to go out of order and we're going to work on the jamming pods, the fuel tanks and the harm missiles. So yeah, we're going out of order, so we're going on to page 11 now. Now the reason is, I've talked about this many times before in the past over the years, and I like to get my ordnance and, like on the case of this one, jamming pods and drop tanks done early on and finished. So when you get towards the end of the build, you just super glue them on and you're done. There's nothing worse than going through, a model, especially a tough one. I'm not saying this one is, but spending, hours of work, and then you get to the very end, and then you're left with half a dozen missiles to build and paints, and for me, it just kind of saps the mojo. So I like to do it early on when I'm still excited about the build, get it done, and move on from there. Now, how I've always structured these videos, I like to kind of do bite-sized chunks by topic. So if somebody, for example, just wants to understand how the Quintus Studios cockpit's set, they can just watch part number 1. If you just want to know how to build, paint, harm missile, you can watch part number 2, and so on. So I kind of break them into chunks so it's easy for people to follow and just kind of pick and choose what subjects or what area they want to work on. And you can watch them obviously in any order. So just because I'm building these second doesn't mean you have to. You can build a whole aircraft and watch this video last and then build them last, right? I guess it's beauty of YouTube. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling now. So 3 pods, 2 drop tanks, and 2 harm missiles. Now, if I remember, I put a link in the show notes below to a Fighter Pilot podcast, because it's really interesting, because this aircraft isn't just about jamming radars and stuff, but there's interesting from, well, maybe it was a Growler, but anyway, so these electronic warfare where they're flying over places like the Middle East, and not only jamming radars and and that kind of thing, but they're picking up like cell phone like conversations from like Taliban leaders and stuff like that. So it's technology involved in this is actually pretty awesome. So what we're going to do, as I mentioned, we're going to build these first and get them done, put them away somewhere safe, and we don't have to worry about it. So skipping forward, page 11, and actually, you know what? Let me switch the camera and we can take a closer look at the instructions. All right, so here we are. Let me zoom in a little here so you can see better. There we go. Pretty simple instructions. So we got the jamming pods. We have sprue D, which has 1 of them. And then we have sprue C, which is match pair. So we have 1 on each one and a drop tank on each one. Sorry, it's a little bit crazy. There you go, there's 1. And then we have sprue CC. Gets a little confusing here. Again, a match pair with a harm missile, which we'll need 2 of those as well. So it's pretty straightforward. If you go scroll through the instructions a little bit towards the back here, the color callouts, again, we've got some, well, we don't really have color callouts, but we have the markings. We looks like we have plenty of stencils for this one to really make them pop. So harm missile and the ECM pod there. And that is pretty much it. So it looks simple, but we're going to obviously go to town here and make the tanks really grimy and weathered up and get all the rest of this painted up. So yeah, so let me go ahead, start cutting some pieces off the plastic and come right back. Okay, so in this video build series, I do kind of want to go back to basics a little bit because I know a lot of people watch these videos and maybe new to modeling. So I'm going to go through maybe some more steps that maybe I wouldn't in my normal videos. So I cut these off, as you see, I glued together 2 fuel tanks and 2 pods. Now, I'm just going to glue together another pod. So simply, just going to cut the parts off the sprue using my sprue cutters. And this is where some people go wrong, that you immediately go to like sand down these parts and clean them up before you put it together. In this point, with these parts, it doesn't foul the join. And as you can see, the parts are still there. So the game plan is you glue them first and then you sand once it's dried. Then you're not going to have like divots and grooves, and it's not going to fit, issues with like, gaps and stuff. So glue it first. And also, don't use extra thin. Like, extra thin's a great glue for small parts, but anything more than 1 inch, it just evaporates and dries really quickly. So most of the time I use Tamiya cement, which is like a resin, thicker kind of glue. and you might see it comes in this bottle too. Same product. I think in America it comes in this bottle. Europe and Asia comes in this bottle, possibly. Same product, but basically it's like a thicker, resiny, gloopy kind of glue. Now, again, for fuselage parts or anything more than an inch, use this glue. It's a great rule. So just rub it over the brush, and it also acts like a bit of a filler too. And then get my two parts, push it together, and it's really tacky. Now, it's not an instant bond, but it dries pretty quickly. I'm just going to make sure it's all kind of level around the seams. And as you can see there, still the parts there where we cut off the sprue, and it fits perfectly. There's no gap in between. So that's how I do that. So I'm going to leave these to dry, and once they're dry, we'll come back to clean them off and get rid of all these seam lines. So I've got everything laid out here, what we need to clean these up. Again, with this video build series, I'm taking a step back and doing some more basic stuff. So I know a lot of people who watch these videos are kind of new to modeling. So glue them together, and the first thing we're going to do is now sand off the parts where it's attached to the sprue. Now, like I mentioned, we didn't do it earlier because it can create gaps. We want to put it together, glue it. Now we're going to remove it. So 220 grit, I find pretty good to removing stuff. This is an Infinity sanding stick. A little big for my liking, but they do a pretty good job. So I'm just going to sand off the part. Okay, now I've sanded it off. I'm going to take my scrape cleaner. Now, this is a Citadel one, which I actually quite like. I used to use a Trumpeter one, and I actually accidentally referred somebody to buying one recently. But this one works better. And just see here, I'm just going over the seam lines, and it just basically scrape cleans it. So from there on in, we're going to now wipe off all the extra parts. We're going to add some seam line filler. Now, there's tons of different products. Tamiya is good, or you can use Vallejo Putty. The space stuff. Recently got the white stuff. I'm not really liking it. The black stuff's okay. I've been using this for a while now. This is basically like a thick kind of like super glue. Yeah, the white one's a little runny. I'm not quite getting that one. So, but you know what? At the end of the day, you can't go wrong with basic sprue glue. So what this is basically just extra thin cement with a bunch of plasticard chopped up and mixed in it. And when I say plasticard, I'm just going to go back here to my drawers and show you this stuff. I mean, yeah, any size, whatever, the plastic sheet, just cut it up and the pieces, put it into there, and it will dissolve over a few hours. And you might just need to, over weeks and months, top it up with more extra thin if it gets thick, or more plastic if it gets runny. And you basically want a gloopy kind of texture. And this actually works, I think, the best for any seam lines, to be honest with you, in the day. So over each of the lines, I'm just going to rub it, which is basically just melted plastic. Now you can use just like offcuts from sprues, in the kits, but this is pure plastic here. The plasticard is a lot better quality. And my bottle is a little bit low, so it's not getting much on the brush here. I definitely need to make a new batch up because it's been a while since I did that. So this one's looking pretty good. There's not really many gaps anyway. I can see just from the eye, but run this over it. And that's it. Let it dry. So, it should dry in a couple of hours. And once it's dry, ta-da, here's one made earlier. So put the sprue glue on early this morning. It's now dry. So I'm simply just going to come back with some, again, my 220, just to sand off all that kind of glue, to smooth it down. You don't go too crazy and flatten it or anything, so just be conscious of where you're sanding. And on the other side. Sorry, I'm not in the camera shot. And then 600 sponge, again, Infinity, 600, so it's not as coarse as it, and this will take out the scratches and smooth it all out. All right. I notice back here it needs a little bit of attention. There we go. So now we've kind of sanded it smooth and hopefully got away with, these lines, remove these lines, the seam lines. We now got to put the panel lines back in. So I still use a trumpeter P color. I've used this for years. It's it's pretty solid. There's all different UMM ones, and I've got all kinds of different colors. But at the end, I just keep coming back to the trumpeter one. So this is Tamiya curve tape. You can use Dymo tape as well, or other kinds of tape. And what I'm going to do is use as a guideline. So I'm just going to place it where I want to cut. And using the wrong tool. And with a P cutter, just going to follow the tape and put that line back in. And you can just use the same tape again here. And up here at the end. Because I don't know about you, but I can't freehand. If I freehand any kind of scribing, it just goes all over the place. It's a mess. So this tape here, or you can use like some photo etch or some kind of bendy thing just to get around here. It makes a huge difference, I find. Now it's losing its tack a little bit, this tape, but and line it up. Use my finger just to hold it in place. And back here. Again, I'm just going to use my finger just to hold it. And back. There. So there we go. Scribe the lines back in. And we're good to go. So once that's done, then I'm going to prime it with basically a fillet, 1500 black Mr. Surfacer. Love this stuff. I use tons of it for anything I prime. And it has some filling properties too. It's thin, kind of like treacly molasses kind of texture. Mix it with lacquer thinner 50-50, and then you're just going to spray it, and it helps microfill any gaps as well. So you can see, again, same toothpick we use for the seats, part number 1. Just stick it in the hole so you can hold it, airbrush it, and as you can see, we have no seam lines and we are seamless. So I kind of took some time, 8 minutes there, just to kind of really go through that. Again, back to basics for people with this build series. But that's how you basically get the seam lines out, the drop tanks, and the all the pods and that kind of stuff. So all's left now is finish off, get all these in prime, and then we can get painting. Okay, so primed up, and as always, I use the AK splatter mask and just basically just wrap it around it and spray some white over it, and it gives you this effect, and just quick misting over to blend it in with some more white. And this is your base color. So when I put the light ghost gray on top of this, it's going to give some interesting color deviations and stuff from that. And so that's for the fuel tanks. The jamming pods aren't going to be weathered or beaten up like the fuel tanks. So these get switched between the various Navy aircraft and stuff, and get beaten up and damaged and dented and rusted and all that kind of stuff and grimed. So I mean, not rusted, but whereas the jamming pods, are very expensive pieces of equipment, and they weigh 1,000 pounds each, and they are taken care of a little bit better. So they're not going to be weathered. So remember I did the 1500 surface of black. In hindsight, I should probably want gray. So came back and just give a quick misting of gray, 1500 gray over the top, just to kind of make it a little bit simpler. And for me, put top coat on, so it's not going to be too dark. And top coat is going to be light ghost gray, which is Guns 308 FS 36375. So now I'm going to give all of this a dusting of light ghost gray, and then we're going to pick out certain panels in a different color on these jamming pods once it's done. So you caught me just unmasking the final jamming pod here and peel this off. And there we go. So did one side of each first and then use the same tape on the other side. No problem at all. Now, quick little clarification or color change. So the pods aren't actually light ghost gray. It called for, I think, for Guns 308, which I don't have, which is XF19. Tamiya is a comparable kind of color there. So give it a quick misting of XF19, which is more pure gray than a bluey gray. Then masked up, as I just mentioned, these panels, and we sprayed them with 305 guns, or you could probably use XF24 Tamiya, would be the same color. So those guys are painted up. These guys are painted up. These ones are light ghost gray, and you can see some of the effect coming through of all the pre-shading we did. And then, as you can see, there's a color change for tanks. For the grime, I really like red-brown. Now you can use the Tamiya, this is Lacquer 57, or you can use the acrylic XF paint. I'm not sure what number it is, but whatever the red-brown is. And very lightly, just mist the front on the end, mist on the front, and then just a couple of like bands and random patches on the tank, because these guys get pretty like dirty, and that's a good color for me, I think. Again, very light mist of both these tanks. Kind of breaks it up a little bit. Now we will use neat oils as well, but that's just kind of starting point with the base paint. As you can see, built harm missiles. These are a little tricky to do. Get rid of seam lines, hopefully. Same way we did with the pods and the tanks. Put the fins in. Now these didn't want to go in, so to make the holes a little bigger, just kind of stretched them out a little bit with my various tools and sand down some flash around where they join the sprue. The attachment points need a little sanding and some care, so they're ready to be primed and painted. Next up, the pylons. Now, the instructions are absolutely terrible here. So these guys, I believe, are going to be for the fuel tanks. And take note of the shape with the pointy thing at the front. Added the sway braces. They're ready to be painted and primed. These two for the jamming pods, you have to put C14 on below, but you have to have like the sway braces in between. Now, I'd save one here to show you guys. And the problem is, if I line this up, it doesn't want to fit. See, there's a massive gap. So I'm just going to cut off the pins, center pins on the sway braces. And if I place it now, it should fit a lot better. I hope. It does fit a little bit better. But I think I need to color a bit more off. And again, there's nothing about this in the instructions. They're pylons, very vague. I looked for instructions several times. There's a center pylon. It doesn't even mention it on the instructions. It shows you it, but it doesn't show you it being placed. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But there you go. See, it fits a little bit better now. So I'm just going to take my white top glue and just run it over the underside of the pylon. We can glue this guy on. And you see it fits much better once you cut those pins off. And what's going to happen is, you know, these two hole points are going to attach to the jamming pod. Although as I see that now, these holes are going to fit. Yeah, okay. I thought the holes were going to be too small, but that's kind of how we're going to look eventually. All right, so I'm going to look through these instructions a bit more. I'll find a center pylon, because obviously we have a center pod here, a jamming pod, and figure out exactly what the game plan with that is. And I'll get these parts painted up as well. All right, so everything's painted up, and just want to circle back and say that the lower fuselage has the center pylon molded in, which is kind of unusual. So we don't have a center pylon; it's just molded into the panel here, which goes on the belly of the aircraft. All right. So that being said, painted these. Well, obviously painted them up, got the decals on, and looking pretty good. Again, a bit of a head scratcher why you only get decals for 2 of the 3 pods. Also, talking of which, I haven't built a Prowler for so long, and I built so many Growlers, the later version, I was thinking to myself, oh yeah, 2 fuel tanks, 3 pods, 2 harm missiles. There's only 5 attachment hard points to attach these things onto a EA-6B. There's a center pylon, and there's 2 on each wing. So looking at most of the configurations, like 90% of the pictures seem to have 3 jamming pods and 2 drop tanks, 2 fuel tanks. That's the configuration. No harm missiles. Now I want to add a little white color to it and break it up and everything. So I did find some pictures where it looked like they had well, a combination of things, but it looks like they had 3 pods, 1 fuel tank, and 1 harm missile, which will probably go with. Or there's or just 2 harm missiles and 1 center tank. There's various combinations, but most of them did have 3 pods and 2 fuel tanks, what you see here. Now, I'm not going to make that decision right now. I'm going to build everything up, and then later on the build, when we come final assembly, we can figure out exactly the combination we're going to do. But for now, plowing along, and we'll get these finished by weathering them. So also painted and gave everything a quick clear coat on the pylons and all the aircraft and all the pods. Everything's been clear coated, so these decals are bedded in, not going to come off hopefully. And I'm going to start off with a power line wash. And this is exactly how we're going to weather the main aircraft, but Florida Models Dark Dirt Wash is still, I think, the easiest and best power line wash. Dark dirt is a color, I mean, it's just grimy, kind of good color. And simply, I've done this many times before, but for you guys new, just pour it into a little plastic container here. With a clean brush, it's going to wipe it on everything. Now, you're better off doing a satin finish. I inadvertently did a gloss finish on this. I think we'll be fine. But satin does make it kind of stick a little bit better. So I'm basically just going to cover everything in this stuff. And I'm just going to stick it in the little part storage behind me here. And same with the pods. Cover everywhere with this stuff. And by which time you probably get the idea what we're doing. Just covering everything. And what we'll do is, watch me paint all of this. Once everything's on here, we'll leave it about 25-30 minutes. Come back and we'll wipe off all the wash. Okay, so it's been over 30 minutes and you see it's kind of dried on there. So what I'm going to do next is just take a little piece of kitchen towel, kitchen paper, kitchen roll, where you're on the wall, whatever you call it, and just going to lick it. Makes it come off a little bit easier. So lick it and then just rub it off. And as you can see, it's coming off. Just rotate the paper when it gets dirty. And this is why it's easier to do it off the pylons and stuff as well, because you want to work all the way around. Don't worry about breaking the pylon off. Again, just a little bit of a lick, kind of help it get off. And looking around, we're pretty good. Looking at lines, we're looking pretty good with this. If you have any filled lines, whatever, this is a time where you can just come back with your scriber and just run it over and just add a little bit more. Here, for example, I'm just going to scribe it, touch in a little bit more wash, and you can see it just fills it up and the line's looking a lot better. Same over here, just going to rescribe it. A bit more wash, some area, just gently wipe it away. And there we are. There we go. You can see the lines picks up lines. On these ordnance and stuff, you're not really going to see too much. When we do actual aircraft itself, all the pound lines and rivets and stuff, this is where it kind of comes into its own. So that's staged weathering. Now that's on, I'm going to give it a final clear coat of matte finish. Now my go-to right now is AK varnish. I like to use acrylic. So let me take a step back. So when it comes to clear coats on aircraft, I use acrylics, and that's because I weather it with oils, enamels, all that kind of stuff. You don't want to use the same medium. I also paint with lacquer paints. So between each layer, you want to use a medium you don't use. So if you're using lacquer paints and enamel thinners and enamel washes, the difference is acrylic. That's what I'm not using. So I use acrylic as a barrier. So here's a thinner, and this mix 50-50 with some matte. This stuff is good, but if you want a really dead matte finish, you can't beat the older versions. This is AK Ultra Matte, Ultra Varnish Matte, and get this stuff. Um, I spray it neat in an airbrush. You can hand paint it, or it says thin it in an airbrush. I spray the stuff neat, and it absolutely dead flat finish. If you ever need that for armor and aircraft. Personally, I like a tiny little bit of sheen, which you probably get from this one. But again, this is find this stuff. This is the ultimate matte, as it says, ultra varnish matte. All right, so let me get this sprayed up, and then we can move on to the next step of weathering. On to the final stage of weathering, and using some Aptilon Starship Filth. This is oil paint, and take my little plastic tray here. By the way, these are just from Amazon. Excuse my messy fingers from all this weathering. Get like 100 of these little like saucer cups and lids for like $5 on Amazon. So that's what I use, and they last me a year or so. So I don't need much paint, just a tiny little drop here. Put the lid back on. And then what I've started using is actually these micro brushes. You use a small paintbrush. I just use these now, and just kind of along the lines. Sorry, my hand's in the way a little bit here. Put some dots about 1 centimeter apart. I tried this in my last build, and I find it actually works better. The paintbrush, I'm putting too much oil paint on. It's a little bit heavy. So, see, I'm just literally just putting these on. Like that. Taking my other brush, which is kind of like well, it's very worn now, but they see it's a bit of a stiffer brush, and just blending it around the line. And like that, you add a little bit of extra depth onto it, and just go ahead and add the oil, brush it in, simple as that, and just accentuates some of the detail. And if you find an area here, find like a spot like that, just put a couple of dots. Just blend it in. That just creates a little bit of weathering, extra weathering on there. So there we go. That's pretty much it. So I'm going to work now on the other fuel tank, and then we'll get all this put together and wrap up this episode. And we are done ski. And here is my loadout. I think I'm going to go with center pylon. We got the pod. We got the 2 jamming pods. And on the outside, then on the inside, we have a fuel tank on the left. Sorry, on the starboard wing. On the port wing, we have 1 harm missile. So that's the loadout, and then we got an extra fuel tank and harm missile we built in case we change our minds later on. So there we go. So a lot of work gone into this, and as you can see, this is why I liked it early on. We got the mojo flowing, and just one other thing to add. So obviously, Starship Filth for drop tanks also added a very small touch of faded dark yellow. It's nice, like hydraulic fuel kind of little stain. So just a microscopic drop, just coming off the panels right there. Just a little drop coming down, change some color. But again, looking pretty nice and weathered. So that's kind of going to pretty much how we're going to actually do the whole aircraft. But kind of micro lesson in weathering here for the Ordnance. So wrapping this one up, again, a lot of work in this. Hopefully enjoyed this one. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. Also, please consider my Patreon channel. do early access and special supporter videos over there, and it really helps me produce these videos and keep this channel going. So yeah, thank you as always. Be back next week with back onto the main fuselage and main assembly, and I'll see you next Friday. Have a good one. Goodbye.